Hey, welcome to CineMike. For this episode, I'm going to review Thor Ragnarok, the third film in the series, and it's part of Phase 3 from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Even though Chris Hemsworth is great, and Loki is arguably the best villain from the MCU, somehow the Thor films have not connected with audiences as much as some of the other heroes. Thor: The Dark World is mentioned by many to be the MCU's lowest point. Personally, I enjoyed the other Thor films, but I do understand how they maybe felt more stale in certain regards. So the studio decided to shake things up with Thor by bringing on director Taika Waititi, who envisioned putting the character through more of a fun comedic adventure. Did shaking things up pay off? Well, if you listen to the critics and most audiences, then the answer seems to be yes. However, for me personally, I wasn't as blown away. Now, that's not to say that I didn't enjoy it because I had fun, but I also feel like it's being a little overpraised. I'm going to lay out my thoughts into good and bad. So let's get started with the good. All of the Marvel films are known for having a great cast, and this one's no different. Chris Hemsworth once again returns to play the God of Thunder for the 6th time. That is if you count all of his appearances in the MCU. And he carries this movie very well. I really enjoyed him as Thor. It's always fun to see him get knocked off his high horse with his arrogance and his confidence, and the whole fish-out-of-water situations that he finds himself in. He's great at juggling humor and drama while also delivering as an action hero. So, he's a lot of fun to watch. Tom Hiddleston is also back as Loki, the God of Mischief. He has the honor of making more appearances in the MCU than any other Marvel villain. Some would argue that he's been the best part about this series. He manages to be a lot of fun to watch, but is also tragic and complicated. He's motivated by resentment and anger for standing in the shadow of Thor, and for being their father Odin's second favorite. The best villains are the ones that we can understand and relate with on some level. And his relationship with Thor is always a highlight. Mark Ruffalo is back as Bruce Banner, aka the Incredible Hulk, and as always with all these MCU movies, he's one of the best things in this. His storyline is based on the Planet Hulk graphic novel, which I always hoped that we would see adapted as a solo movie for him. I guess this is the closest we're ever going to get to that though, so it was nice to see elements of that sprinkled in here. Thor has to face him in the arena for the Contest of Champions, and that fight was a lot of fun to watch. These guys are just trying to one-up each other, and they're throwing each other to the walls of the arena, just hard-pounding hits, and there's some funny little moments. I thought that the effects for the Hulk were the best yet here also. I really could feel Ruffalo's performance coming through. It also helped that they actually had the Hulk talk this time, which makes sense because in the comics he does, but for some reason in the movies they always reserved that. And there's some really funny interactions with Thor. They have great chemistry together. We have some new cast members joining the party, and my personal favorite addition was Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie, a former warrior for Asgard that has fallen from grace and is now an alcoholic bounty hunter. She's a total badass and shows a lot of layers to the character. Her devil-may-care attitude is funny, but you realize later on that she has more of a heart than she is letting on. Pretending not to care is her defense mechanism. I really enjoyed her in this. There's also Jeff Goldblum, who looks like he was having tons of fun chewing the scenes that he was in as the Grandmaster, the ruler of Sakaar, which is the planet that Thor and Hulk find themselves trapped on. Cate Blanchett is obviously a great casting choice for the main villain of this film, Hela, the Goddess of Death. There are some revelations about her character that ties her backstory very closely into Odin and Asgard. Karl Urban is nothing like the Scourge from the comics, but I did like that he wasn't just a straight-up bad guy. He has doubts, and he feels guilt for his part in helping Hela. Then of course you have other actors like Anthony Hopkins and Idris Elba, who are always great no matter what. Hopkins got to have a little fun this time playing Loki, who is disguised as Odin. I enjoyed the adventure feel to this one. I liked having an old school quest and a journey to get there, how our hero acquires allies along the way. The concept of Thor assembling his own team felt like a fun poke at Civil War for not including him, the Revengers being a fun twist on Avengers. Thor Ragnarok also delivers with the action, effects, and spectacle. The movie opens with a really impressive pre-title sequence that shows Thor battling the fire demon Surtur and his army. Thor's hammer is barely in this movie, but this opening definitely makes good use of it. The planet Sakaar is also pretty cool visually. I like that there's a fan base for Hulk that parades through the streets. The final battle in Asgard on the Rainbow Bridge is also pretty cool. You get to see Thor harness lightning in a way that you've never seen before, and there's some giant CGI monsters, of course, that Hulk is fighting with, and some big set pieces to look at. I also like the look and style of this movie. From wardrobe to makeup to set design to cinematography, the use of colors. It's a good looking movie. I'm a bit on the fence about the next point I'm going to bring up. I see pros and cons to it. One of the goals that it seemed to be for this movie was to strip away everything that makes Thor who he is. This time, no Natalie Portman, no threat to Earth, no long hair, no hammer, and many of the other things that you associate with this series. In some ways, this created interesting opportunities, but it also made this not really feel like Thor. So I can see good and bad in that. I have some mixed feelings about the way that they ended this movie, but I also do respect the risks that they took. Like Captain America Winter Soldier, our hero's world is forever changed. This also somewhat follows what happened in the comics, so you can never fault a movie for that. Okay, now on to the bad. Now, some of these points that I'm going to bring up have good things about them, like the humor, for instance. The director mentioned in an interview that he didn't feel like the first two Thor movies were funny enough, that he felt that Ragnarok needed to have more humor in it. I thought that was kind of strange because I felt that The Dark World had a lot of humor in it, actually. Anyways, while having levity in a superhero film isn't a bad thing, I do feel that the comedy here is a bit too heavy. It's a little jarring at first because there's so much more of it than any other Thor film, and actually maybe more than any other Marvel film too. Some of it works, like the interactions between characters and the situational comedy. There's a very funny moment where Thor walks in on a play written by Loki to showcase what a great guy he is. There's some real fun cameos that I won't spoil, but yeah, there is some fun here. The worst bits is that some of it gets very slapstick and feels out of place. Like, it just doesn't fit with the other MCU movies tonally, except maybe Guardians of the Galaxy. Hemsworth is very good at working with the humor, but it also just doesn't feel very Thor-like in places. The way he acts and some of his dialogue seems too goofy for the character. Loki also has some fun moments here, but he too feels watered down and much less threatening. There's just one gag piled on top of the other, and I think that it ultimately makes it hard to feel any weight to the story. Considering that Ragnarok is about death and the possible destruction of Asgard, it should have felt epic, but the humor made the stakes feel smaller and less serious. The other issue with the humor is the tonal shifts. You'll have huge sections of non-stop jokes, and then they'll expect you to very quickly accept a dramatic moment. The transitions are not smooth, and it minimizes the effect of moments that should have been serious. Like, there were some pretty major deaths in this movie, and I was frustrated with how they were handled. These deaths should have been a big deal, but they were very glossed over and had no weight to them. It just felt disrespectful to the characters. Another issue that I have is that after a pretty good opening sequence, the movie drifts through a chaotic first act. The situation of Loki taking Odin's place in Asgard is resolved much faster than I expected. The way things were left off, I just thought there'd be more drama and struggle, but it just felt like they wanted to rush through it. I understand that they wanted to get to the main plot, but this just didn't feel right pacing-wise, and they also again made too light of the situation. Also, the Doctor Strange scene felt forced and unnecessary. He just pops in and quickly helps with the situation, and then he pops out. We were just jumping all over the place here, and it was pretty difficult for me to settle into the story at first. Once we moved into the second act with Thor being enslaved on Sakaar, then I did begin to enjoy it more, but the first part was a struggle for me. While Blanchett delivered the best performance that she could, I also felt that Hela didn't reach her full potential. In the end, she was just another generic villain who wants to destroy and conquer. Considering her backstory, it just felt like there was a lot of unexplored options to make her character more unique. Also, Lady Sif was noticeably absent from this movie, which, if the actress Jamie Alexander was unavailable, what can you do? But it was weird for continuity because she was being built up through the film series to be a potential love interest for Thor, and she certainly is in the comics. So it kind of felt like they just dropped that storyline, which I didn't really feel great about. I really hated how they handled the Warriors 3 in this movie. I enjoyed those guys in the previous two films, but here, it was disappointing. I mean, it's fun and entertaining on a surface level. I enjoyed the cast and the spectacle, but there's nothing here that resonates. I love these movies, but lately they're all just action comedies. Of course, some of them should be funny, but some of them should also be taken more seriously too. If you look at the comics, then you'll see there's much more of a variety in genre and tone. Some of the stories go very dark, actually. Now, I'm not saying this should be a drama or anything, but I would have appreciated it just to have some more stakes and to go deeper into certain moments. There are actually some moments in this that could easily have been deeper, but they gloss over them and rush to the next joke. As a fun ride, I will say that the movie did deliver. I wasn't bored and I was entertained. Despite all of my criticisms, I did still overall enjoy the movie, so I'm going to take that into account when rating it. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the very best that this particular movie could be for me. I would give Thor Ragnarok a 7.5. And that was my review. So if you enjoyed this video, then please click upvote, and feel free to leave a comment below. Tell me if you agree or disagree, and I also welcome you to follow my channel. You can also follow me on Twitter at CineMike Nerd. So anyways, until next time, this is Mike, signing off.